So let's talk about the relationship. How much is a discount point going to cost? Yeah, 1% of the loan amount. But if you pay that 1% of the loan amount, how much does it affect your actual rate? 1/8. I think people get confused about that. So that 1% of the loan amount affects the rate by 1/8. So the problem could look like all kinds of things. They could just ask you how much are the discount points going to cost? Or they could get a little more deeper than that and ask you how many points you need to pay. So it could say something like the investor, the one whose money is being borrowed, wants a 7% yield. And if the question starts out with that, you see that word yield, you're going to think immediately, this is a discount point question, because that's what discount points are. That could be another question that's not calculation related. They could say, what's another word for discount points? And lender yield is another word for it. Also, prepaid interest. All three of those phrases and words mean the same thing. So if the investor wants a 7% yield and the lender is willing to make the loan at 6.5%, why would they do that? So the borrower can afford it, right? The borrower couldn't otherwise make the payment. So what's a way that that borrower could handle their 30 years worth of monthly payments at 6.5% in a market where the typical rate is 7? Buy down the rate, right? So if they structure the question like this, you're going to realize, oh, okay, so we've got a spread or a differential of 0.5%. We need to buy the rate down to get that. We need to buy the rate down by 0.5%. So how much will it cost to get that rate down? Some people, yeah, right. And we got that by saying 0.5% divided by the decimal equivalent of 1/8. 1/8 of a percent is 0.125. If you forget that, you can just plug it into the calculator, because 1 divided by 8, 1/8 is that. And then that gives us that 4 number, which is the number of discount points needed. Now that we know how many are needed, the only other thing we need to know is how much of a loan amount we're talking about. And let's just say it's $134,000. I won't make you calculate it with LTV. 4 discount points on $134,000 is 4% of $134,000 is $5,360. You okay there? Kind of have to put a couple things together. It could just very well be that all they ask you is, how much will 4 discount points cost? In that case, you just need the 4 as a percentage of the loan amount and whatever the loan amount actually is. But they might take it a step further. So you need to know that 1/8. And another thing they could do with discount points is combine it with origination fee, because it's such a common pair of lender-related fees. So they could say the discount points the borrower needs to pay are 3. They need to pay 3 points. And the origination fee the lender is charging is 1.5%. How much will the borrower be paying total for both? There's a couple ways you could handle that, but let me give you a moment. Let's give everybody some time to work through that real quick. Take your time, not real quick. Yeah, exactly. That's the quickest way to do it, isn't it? Yeah. All you had to do there is add up the 3 and the 1.5 because both of those are percents of the loan amount. So 3 and 1.5, since all you're doing is coming up with the total anyway, just calculate 4.5% of the loan amount. You could certainly calculate 3% and then calculate 1.5% and add up those dollars. But if we say the loan amount is, let's have some fun and get up there toward the lake, maybe $713,000 loan amount, we need to pay 4.5% of that in the form of some origination fee and also discount points. Then that's just plugging it in. 713 times 4.5. Oops. 713. Forgot that decimal. So we'd be paying $32,085 for a combination of both the discount points and the origination fee. Another thing that you need to be sharp on is what closing costs are paid by whom. Which closing costs are paid by whom. So tell me as I call them out. Excise tax. Who pays excise tax? That's a seller. And what numbers do we need to calculate it? What do we need to have? There it is. Yeah, we need that sale price. And then what about deed preparation? You're right. And sometimes on the big monster question, they'll say attorney fees are $700, deed prep is $300. And pretty much on some of these questions that you'll run across, the only seller attorney fee is the deed prep. In real life, they'll have some other things. That attorney's going to also charge them a recording fee, a FedEx or overnight fee to send their final payoff. If that's what it says, what if it says final payoff to seller's mortgage, overnight fee? That'd be a seller expense because it's their loan. Overnight, let's just say it that way. And then what about the sale price? Whose expense is that? Obviously. And then what about the loan amount itself, the amount being borrowed? How does that count? There it is. You got it. That's a buyer credit. And sometimes it's hard to get your mind around that. They probably, because we don't do it in real life, they probably won't say the down payment and ask you to put that in, because by having both sale price and loan amount, that is accomplished. What about homeowner's insurance policy, the premium for the first year? Where would that show up? Homeowner's insurance. Who's homeowner? There it is. Yeah. Homeowner's insurance. And they always collect the first year's premium for that. So that's what you'll see when they give you that big laundry list, big question. And then what? Yep. Yeah. Well, then there's a good question. The HOA could end up being a proration, right? Probably will be. Other prorations. Let's just do that. What are the prorations we could expect to see? HOA. What other things get prorated on? I know you know tax already. I'll take that one away from you. What else? What could be prorated between the parties? No, that's not going to be between the two parties because it's not a seller-related expense, right? It's only something the buyer's dealing with. And also, don't think just expenses. What's the one thing that might be something coming in? Like seller is responsible for the day of closing. Usually that means they have to pay for the day of closing, but there's one case where they're getting money for the day of closing. Not in all transactions, but just the ones where this applies. Sellers collecting money at the first of the month. Giving you hints. Think investment property. Yeah, there it is. Rent. You got it. So rent is probably going to be a proration because the seller collected all of it at the first of the month. And rent, the only thing where the buyer pays per day of closing is interim interest. Yeah, rent is going to be the seller has collected it on the first. That's terrible. There we go. Has collected it on the first, and now we need to take some money back from them because they don't get to keep the whole month's worth. So rent is going to be a proration where we are debiting the seller, crediting the buyer for the buyer's number of days. When you're thinking of those things, what is it, a credit or a debit? And then that's not all. For which amount? The buyer's amount or the seller's amount? So HOA, tax, rent. All of those things are prorations. I'm trying to think of any other prorations. That's about it. What about private mortgage insurance premium? What do you imagine that might be? Private mortgage insurance premium. Sometimes you might see something on there that just didn't pop out in the class, so you have to kind of put it together, right? Kind of figure it out. And if you see that, well, who pays private mortgage insurance? Private mortgage insurance is related to the borrower's loan, right? The borrower's, yeah, there we go. Yep. Because their lender's requiring the PMI, therefore the borrower has to pay for it since the lender wants it. Right. Mortgage insurance premium would be on the buyer's side. And then what about loan escrow? Oh, hang on a second. Let's just call it MI because it might be PMI or it might be MIP depending on the type of loan, right? Which type of loan would it be called MIP? Conventional, FHA, or VA? Which one is called MIP? Mortgage insurance premium. Let's take a guess. Yeah, it's mortgage insurance premium is an FHA loan. That's a government loan. MIP, I can't. Well, you guys are too young to know the Disney thing. KEYMOUSE. I don't know. Is that still a thing? I can't help thinking of that. But okay, there we go. The conventional loan mortgage insurance is called PMI, private mortgage insurance. And if you know those words for those acronyms, it'll kind of give it away because a conventional loan is a private loan, while an FHA loan is a government loan. So private mortgage insurance applies to conventional loans. FHA loan, a government insured loan, right? The word insured, need you to equate that with FHA because the FHA insures those loans that is a mortgage insurance premium, but they both are types of mortgage insurance. So what else? We've got, what about, escrow. Setting up the escrows for taxes, insurance, and NPMI or MIP. Who's going to pay for setting up those escrows? The lender tells the attorney, I want you to collect 3 months for taxes, 4 months for insurance. Whose side does that go on? You got it. That's it. Yeah, because it's the buyer's loan. The only thing having to do with the seller's loan, by the way, is their payoff. That's the only thing related to the seller's old loan. We just need to pay off the seller's existing loan. Every other loan-related thing is going to be a buyer side. So that might take some of that mystery out of it for you. Loan payoff for seller's existing loan, that's something they're going to have to pay, obviously. What about interim interest? Who pays that, buyer or seller? That's a buyer only, right? That's the one where the buyer pays day of closing because there is no seller involved in this one. And that lender says, welcome to our borrowing family. Now pay us for the last 12 hours that you will, that you're going to be owning this on the day of closing. And then what about deed recording fee? Recording the deed itself. Yeah, that's a buyer because we're talking about the new lead. I'm sorry, the new deed. Got to shift from brokerage over to education. Yes. That's right. Survey. How about a survey? Who's paying for that? That's buyer because it's the survey, the new survey on the house. What about a courier fee for the loan documents to the buyer's lender? Yeah, kind of gave that one away. They might also tell you a courier fee for the payoff. I think we already talked about that. That'd be this one. Payoff overnight. Could call it a overnight fee or a courier fee. Attorney fee. They just say attorney fee. Probably buyer, yeah. And so there's not a lot of line items on the seller side. Now, as a credit, because we were mostly talking about expenses on this sheet, but as a seller credit, that sale price is going to be there. It's not a proration, but it is going to show up on both sides of the statement, on both the seller and the buyer side. The buyer's as an expense and the seller's as a credit, or I should say debit and credit. Commission, brokerage commission, where's that going to show up? I think everybody agreed that was a seller fee usually. Yep, we're going to work with that as a seller fee. It's, it could be negotiable. They could work it out that a little bit is paid from both, but probably we're not getting that complicated in this class, in a pre-licensing class. So, yeah, seller typically pays the commission. Due diligence money, how's that going to count on the statement? Due diligence. As a what for the buyer? Due diligence fee is something the buyer already wrote a check for and gave to the seller in the beginning at the very first day it went under contract. Therefore, we need to now count that as a credit to the buyer's side. What about earnest money? As far as the buyer is concerned. Earnest money, yeah, it's a credit. You got it. Both the due diligence and the earnest money, that's something that we tell the buyer when they're thinking about writing an offer. Kind of helps them feel a little better. We say, look, guys, we need you to write 2 checks for me to go along with this offer so they'll take us seriously. We're obviously not going to give the due diligence check to the listing agent as part of the offer. We're probably just going to take pictures of them to show that the checks have been written and then send the offer paperwork and, you know, an image file showing here are the checks. Can't give them the due diligence check yet because that's made to the seller and the seller would be able to cash it, and this isn't a done deal. The earnest money probably going to be handled the same way in real life, but how do they count on closing day is what the question was, and they both count as a credit to the buyer's side. Now, how do they count on the seller's side? The due diligence money has already been received by the seller. So the only way we can count it on the closing day is as a seller debit. If we don't, then we would have been giving him due diligence money twice. If that somehow clangs around in your head and it's like does not compute, just don't worry about it. Just memorize it. And trust me, don't worry about the why so much. Just take it as one of those rules like 43,560 square feet in an acre. Just think of it that way. So due diligence counts on the seller's side as a debit and on the buyer's side as a credit. How does earnest money count on the seller's side? This is kind of a trick question. Exactly. They don't have it. They never got it. It sits in an escrow account. So earnest money is a non-issue for the seller. So we're just going to not have that on the seller's side at all. It'll show up in some other way, but it definitely shows as a credit to the buyer, and it depends on who's holding it. If it's a firm, a brokerage firm, then what's probably going to happen is the attorney is just going to give them however much that earnest money is less of a commission check, and they'll just take the balance of their commission check. Like if the commission is $10,000 and the earnest money is $1,000, the attorney will cut them a check for their commission for $9,000. They'll take it back to the office. The office manager will move that earnest money that's sitting in their trust account over to their operating account for accounting purposes, and that's how they are made whole, and they end up with $10,000. Just so that we're not. Otherwise, back in the day, the way they used to do it is, we have $1,000 earnest money in the trust account. Cash, write a check for me, Mr. Office Manager. I'll take it to the attorney, give it to them, and they'll turn around and give me the $10,000, which is like unnecessary currying of funds, right? That's just kind of how it works in real life. But how does it count on the statement is the most important thing. So let me give you this. Let's work on a monster question. Let me do it this way. Oh yeah, I'll just do it on here. Okay. Give you some time, and I will make it nice and zoomed in here. So one of those monster questions, in this case, let's work on this. And in fact, you guys can talk to each other, work together, talk through it. And I'll just kind of be around hanging out here. But it says, need you to get two things out of this scenario. Tell me what the buyer needs to bring, and then also tell me what the seller will receive at closing, using the following facts. Obviously, a reminder that it's a 360-day year. Seller is responsible for day of closing, compared to both, except for interim interest, in which case it's the buyer. Don't worry about this one. In fact, I'll just take that one out. Yeah, round to the nearest cent, but this is an example taken from a post class. And then common practices. What do you know about who typically pays what? Work with that information. Try to get, can you see that whole thing? If I zoom to a certain point. That's everything. Okay, hang on then. Let me oh, I know. There in the chat, I've put it as a PDF. Hopefully you can open it up as a PDF and you can see it a lot easier as another window, perhaps. Is that working? Tell me if it doesn't work. Otherwise, I'll just email it to you. I think that should open up. Okay. Okay, let me try again. What about now? That work? Can you see that message I just typed in the chat? But not the attachment. Huh. Weird. Okay, give me a second. Let me find that email. Oh, I don't have it in this place I'm looking. Tell me that. Just put that in the chat for me, Sylvia, and I'll shoot it to you. Anybody else not receive it? You good? Everybody good? Okay. There we go. Thank you. There you go. Just sent. Yeah, feel free to speak out and talk to each other. Or me. We're just in one nice big little study session, so whatever you want to do, no problem. If you want to compare notes, Which one are you on? Okay. Let's see. Interim interest. What do we need to know for that? What facts do we need for that? We're Yes, daily rate, time. Wait a minute. It's just for the month of closing. So we're on November, right? There's the 17th right about in the middle. So what we're trying to accomplish is including the day of closing, that's that number of days times the daily interest, right? So it's going to be 30 total days minus 17 plus 1. So 13 plus 1. So you have 14 days to the buyer because that includes day of closing. And then to calculate the dollars that equates to, we need daily interest. And to get daily interest, we need loan amount times interest rate to get annual and to convert that to daily. So our loan amount, I think I was just calculating that, 193,750 times, what was it, 90? Yeah. LTV, 174,375 times our interest rate on the loan, 7, gives us a 12,206.25 divided by 360. There's our daily. So 3391 times the 14. Did you figure out what step you were missing? Okay, good. Mm-hmm. Yep. Typically, the only attorney fee is going to be the deed preparation. The only seller paid attorney fee is going to be deed prep. So the bigger attorney fee is probably going to be the buyer, to the buyer, paid by buyer. Because it's the buyer who hires the attorney, and that's who for whom the most of the work is being done. Yeah. Right, because it's their new deed, so they're going to want it to be recorded. That interim interest, we came up with 474.74. Okay. Mhm. Okay, let's see here. All right. Bringing up the back here. You guys done? You got what the buyer's paying and then what the seller's also getting? Oh, you still have to calculate that, right? Okay. I'm working on it myself. I don't have an answer sheet. I just pulled it from air. So we'll go over it together whenever you guys are ready. Okay. Well, let's see. I ran out of space, but first one would be obviously price. 193,750 counts as a debit to buyer, credit to seller. And then the next one in line, I skipped taxes. I did that at the end because but if you've gone ahead and done that, then that's just calculating the daily, the 1843 divided by 360. I don't think that's a mystery anymore. So that's 512 per day. And then counting the number of days. And so this is pretty late in the year, so it's November 17th. That's the 11th month. So the 10th month times 30 days is 300 days, plus another 17 for the month of closing. 317 days to seller. And so how are we going to handle taxes in this case? I mean, once we know what the number is, how do we attribute it to the parties? Yep. And it's going to be a debit who, credit who. Or debit. It's going to be either a proration or debiting both. So have they been paid or not for the year? Since they have not, that's the one that is a debit to both sides. So the seller's side debit is going to be this 1643.04. Are we good on why that's a debit for both sides? If the seller is not paid, because there's the whole year. On the screen, a whole year here. And here's our closing date. And so they've not been paid, but as of this September 1st, they were able to be paid. Therefore, calculate the seller's portion and debit them that. Calculate the buyer's portion and debit them that. We're not going to let the buyer hang on to the seller's money because it's just about time for the whole thing to be due anyway. That's just the procedure. That's how that's done. So if 1623.04 is the seller's portion, then you don't need to do any calculation of buyer days. All you need to do is subtract that from the total dollars of taxes, which was 1843. And so 1843 minus 1623.04 is 219.96 that the buyer needs to pay. And I just crammed that in over here because I ran out of space in my debit column. All right, so there's our taxes. Next on the list, earnest money, $2,100 counts as a credit to buyer. It also needs to count as a debit. Nope, that's not the right one. That's earnest money. We're good on earnest money. Then it's due diligence money that also needs to count not only as a credit to buyer, but as a debit to seller. I left that one out. So there we go. Yeah. I didn't. I just calculated. Seller days. Yeah. It was October. So that's the 10th month times 30 days. That's 317. It is, but only 17 days in November. Right? Yeah. So if it's November, that's the 11th month, 11/17. 10 months is October, so that's 10 full months of 30 days each, 300 days, and then add the 17 days in November to get to 317. Oh, there it is. Is that better? Or you can use fingers and toes, or you can make hash marks. What I don't suggest you do is count backwards. As tempting as it is, if we're closing in November, to say 30 days in December plus whatever's left in November, it's so easy to lose track of that day of closing by trying to go backwards. But and they'll probably give you an answer choice of one day of closing off because they know it's such a common mistake. Okay, due diligence is counted on both sides. It's a credit to buyer and debit to seller. Loan payoff of the seller of $123,000. I've got that up here. That's a seller debit because we're paying off their existing loan. Homeowner's insurance policy for 1 year. Another word that you could see that referred as is premium. Could say the homeowner's insurance premium, or they could say the first year's premium. But you know that means whatever that amount is, it's going to be a debit to the buyer to cover their entire first year of homeowner's insurance. Seller brokerage commission, 5% of sale price. So take sales price, 5% of that, and gave us this $96.8750 as a seller debit. Financing, got a 90% loan to value, so we can calculate 90% of $193,750, count that as a buyer credit over here. We're also going to be using that in some other calculations in a minute, one of which is loan origination fee and discount points together count for 4.5%, because the origination fee is 1.5 and the points are 3. So let's just calculate them both if you want to. I think I did them separately. Yeah, I did. But you could have done them together. So let's do them together as like a safety, just sort of as a double check. 78, and so then minus the individual. Yep, there it is. It worked. You okay on that? And then appraisal report, credit report, they don't factor into this because they were paid already, paid outside of closing. In post 302, you will write these down because we actually fill out the literal closing disclosure sheet. It's like what you saw on the final exam when you click that PDF to get these rules. That he also gave you the closing disclosure, but you didn't need to use it for your purposes. You will in post. And then interim interest. I think we did that together already. We got the 474. If you need me to go back over it, private message me and we will. But I think we just did that. Private mortgage insurance premium for the first year due at closing. That's just a case of the lenders telling the attorney, this is what I want you to do. Collect $713 from the buyer. So stick that $713 on the buyer's side as a debit. Loan escrow account deposit required by borrower's lender. Now we're thinking in terms of 12 months. When it's escrow, think divide by 12. So 4 months of real property taxes. Taxes are $1,843 per year, divided by 12 times how many? 4. They want us to collect 4 months of them. So 4 of those monthly amounts of taxes. And I come up with $614.32. And then for insurance, it was 3 months of homeowner's insurance, $159.25. Tell me if you disagree. And then here's a little kicker. What we saw on that problem we did from the exam last week, this past week, they handled this PMI escrow thing. They said it's 0.35% of the premium or something. You might also see it this way. Notice it says 2 months private mortgage insurance premiums based on an annual renewal cost. If they say that, then you don't need to calculate it. You don't need to divide the PMI premium by 12 because that's not how much it's going to cost to renew. They're telling you how much it's going to cost to renew per year. It's going to be $43.32. And so therefore just collect 2 of those. So that'd be $86.64. And that's what I have right here. Does that make sense? You're just following their instructions. But typically, if they don't give you it spelled out like this, you're going to need to take the premium if they give it to you divided by 12 like you did on those other tax and insurance ones. In this case, we just take that $43.32 divided by or multiplied by 2. The attorney fee, $750 is going to the buyer's side, debit. The title insurance premium, that's benefiting the buyer's lender, therefore the buyer pays, so $211.35 on that debit column for the buyer. Deed prep is a seller expense, so that's going over here. Deed recording, the new deed is what we're talking about, so that's a buyer expense. It's going to go on their side. Mortgage recording fee for the borrower, $45, another one for them to pay. Excise tax, I came up with $388. Any disagreement there? Okay, I'm looking at faces. I'm assuming you're good. Surveys $540, that's a buyer one. Pest inspection $85, that's a buyer one. Courier fee for the loan documents for the buyer, that's $40 for them, and then $40 for the seller to mail their final payoff. Now, I just come up with let's do the seller's side, for instance. The only credit I have for the seller, there's no tax credit for the seller because it's not a proration. They weren't paid, therefore we need to debit them. So there's no other credit besides the price. So that leaves us with those debits subtracted from the price, $193,750, and I get seller receiving $55,311.46. And then what does the borrower need to bring? Let's do the credits first. Well, no, we'll do the debits first and subtract one by one. $193,750. 637 plus 2615.63 plus 5231.25 474.74 713 put something in wrong, so I had to come up with some quick math to make up for it. So I get, for expenses, debits, $206,198.14. Now we'll subtract out the credits. And I get buyer bringing $26,223.14. Disagreements? Something different? Questions? And I could be wrong. I was just plugging them in. I wasn't looking carefully with every time I punched something in. Who's off by how much? Oh, right. Got it. Oh, yeah, that's true. You just account for that extra 30. Yep. There you go. Yeah, and what you might want to do, speaking of that, let's think up a list of common mistakes for this sort of thing. So when you finish for your big monster problem, go through that list, mentally and think, okay, number of days to seller for taxes, for HOA if applicable, for rent, the day of closing to buyer on interim interest to make sure that we're good on that. What other frequently made mistakes can you think? Making sure all the attributions are proper, like interim interest. Let's see. Well, the steps would be calculate the number of days in the month remaining in the month of closing, including the day of closing. Step 2 is calculate the daily interest. And to do that, we use loan amount times interest rate to get annual interest, and then take that divided by 360. And then step 3 is multiplying steps 1 and step 2 together. And then the entry itself would be a debit buyer. Step 2, daily interest, calculating the daily interest. And to do that, we need the loan amount times the interest rate. If you like the T formula better, loan amount times interest rate gives us annual interest, and then we divide that by 360 to get the daily. Once we have daily, we multiply that by the number of days, which include day of closing. That's a big one for interim interest. Buyer pays day of closing. So, attributions, who pays what? Just remembering who pays what. And I think the ones that people lose track of the most, deed preparation, because so much of things about the deed are buyer's expense usually, but this time it's the seller for deed prep. Any sort of PMI, MIP, mortgage insurance is a buyer thing. Escrow, setting up the escrow. First of all, divide by 12 to get it per month. Multiply it by the numbers of months required from the lender, and it's a buyer expense. Excise tax to seller. Due diligence money is a credit buyer, debit seller. Earnest money is just a credit buyer, nothing to the seller. Seller's loan. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it could vary. It could be, do you mean down here? Like the way we handled private mortgage insurance this time? Yeah. They could either do like you did on the practice final, where it was a 0.35% of the premium or something, or you could see it as an annual renewal cost. So just process it, take it in, think, what are they talking about? Okay, they want to collect how many months of private mortgage premiums and for how much. If you see renewal cost, then that's what you use. You don't need to divide anything by 12. Just take the renewal cost they give you. Because that's all that matters. Because in real life, the lender's telling the attorney what they want them to collect from the buyer. So that's what you're doing here. The lender says, right. Exactly. With escrow, it's all about the months. Because what's happening with escrow, the lender needs to set up an escrow account to have enough cushion of money available to pay these bills when they come due. These aren't bills that are paid monthly, right? The tax bill's not paid monthly, it's paid once a year. So they just need to have that cushion of money available when that bill comes out in September. And the lender's not even going to pay it in September. They probably are going to pay it in like November or December. And then the insurance premium, that's not something you pay every month. You do as a borrower with your payment, but it doesn't get paid to the insurance company until probably once a year. And then, so with the insurance, for instance, it's going to show up twice in two different line items on the closing disclosure. It'll show up here setting up the escrow, but it'll also show up where you paid that first year's premium, right? You're paying the whole first year up front, but then you're also given a few months worth to cushion the escrow account, so it's available in year 2 and beyond. Plenty available to be paid, because these things go up sometimes. Taxes could go up, insurance could go up, and it's just good to have enough. If you don't have enough, and I've received one of these before because I've had a mortgage for a long time. The lender sent me a letter saying, look, the taxes went up and your escrow account is short by $200. Do you want to include it in your next payment? How do you want to handle it so that you can make sure we have the proper amount set up for cushion in your escrow account? But they're trying to avoid having to do that, right? They want to make sure there's enough when those bills come due. Because what if there's not? And what if that borrower doesn't have it available or isn't willing to pay it? That lender doesn't want to, pay it for them. And they certainly don't want to go through a foreclosure or anything just because of $30 or $100 worth of a little bit of, deficit, because there's not enough to pay the bill. So that might help you understand it and remember why it's something that's done. I think that's about it as far as problem children in this problem. Things to look out for, to double check to make sure you did right. Besides that, just making sure you debited and credited properly, because those are the types of mistakes I make with math. We good on that? Let's look at some problems out of the book. There we go. There we go. If you don't have the book with you, I'll just give you the problem. But we're looking at page 387. I might just need to read it to you. Yeah, 387. There we go. Okay. Fix this. Say that again. Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah, I will. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just messing with that. Yep. There we go. You're welcome. So 28. This is a 3-part question using the same set of data. So a house is being bought for $180,000 with a loan of $153,000. The term of the loan is 30 years at a 7% rate. Loan factor is 6.65 to amortize the loan, so it's going to cost $6.65 per thousand borrowed. The annual taxes are $996. The annual premium for the homeowner's policy is $480. And then what is the monthly PITI? Let me get it within those grids. Sorry for the grids. Monthly PITI. We're going to need to calculate principal, interest, taxes, and insurance and put that together into a PITI. So let me rearrange some stuff here real quick. What do you think that we need to do for this? So let's see, loan amount divided by 1,000. Yep, times the factor. That's going to give us our monthly P and I. I'm setting myself up here so I can share this with you and still have the iPad showing. So 1 second. Right. Right. The only thing you're dividing by something is the loan amount. Just the loan amount itself. Okay, 1 second. Let me pull this over so I can share it with you. So you got your monthly P and I. Here we are. Good. All right. Then we need to calculate what's next. What would be the next thing we need to calculate? Say again. We've got that using the loan factor, right? Yeah. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Okay. 1 second. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Okay. So we've used the loan amount of 153. We divide that by 1,000 to get 153. And then multiply that by the factor of 6.65 to get our monthly principal and interest. So that's 1,017.45 for P and I. Now we need to calculate just the I. Wait, no, sorry. I was thinking of something else. So we've got our P and I. P and I is the 1,017.45. Now we need to get our taxes. Taxes annually are $996. What do we need to do to convert those to monthly? Divide by 12. So the taxes per month, did you get $825 or did I do that wrong? $83. There it is. Tax portion is $83, and then the insurance annual premium is $480. Same thing. Divide by 12. $40. So PITI altogether is this. $1,140. Right. Exactly. We needed to get the monthly portion go toward insurance, the monthly portion to go toward taxes, and combine that with the monthly PI. And that's what they do. That's how the lender comes up with what your monthly payment's going to be. So our monthly payment, PITI combined, $1,140.45. Which is item number C, letter choice C. Now, next question they ask is, what will be the total amount of interest paid over the life of the loan if the payments are for the full 30-year term? And I believe that's something Ben was asking earlier. Is that right? Is that one that you ran into maybe? Oh, okay. Let's talk about that a little bit later. Let's do this one. Yeah, let's see. So first step, we know our loan amount. That's 153. Sorry for my crappy looking pen. There we go. Maybe that'll look better. Oops. My goodness. There we go. Loan amount is 153. The Sorry, I was on the wrong problem. And 1 second, let me make sure my power is good. I don't want to lose this. Oh. Power cable came undone. There we go. That should be better. So we take our monthly that we calculated $1,017.45 per month, times it by how many payments there's going to be, 360 total. That's 30 years of 12 months worth, 12 months over 30 years, 12 times 30, 360 total payments. That tells us that we're paying $366,282 of PI over the entire 30 years. Then we subtract from that the original amount that we borrowed, the 153. That shows us that our total interest paid over the life of the loan is $213,282. So you needed that PITI. I'm sorry, just the PI portion, $1,017.45. That was just the PI portion that you got using the loan factor. That times 360 gives us our total PI over the whole loan. Subtract out exactly 30 years times 12 months a year. Yep. That gives us total PI. Subtract the original loan amount, gives us how much we ended up paying in interest. And so when it asks you that question, the total amount of interest paid over the life of the loan, those are the steps you take. PI times 360 minus loan amount. Then the question we did before, what is the principal amount owed after the first monthly payment has been made? We know that our loan amount's 153, so therefore 153 loan amount times interest rate of 7% is going to give us the amount of annual interest, $10,710. That's annual. Convert that to monthly. $892. Yeah, that's the rate. That's the interest rate. The rate of interest that they gave us. $892.50 is the annual interest. We already knew that the monthly P and I is the 1,017.45. So that PI minus the 892I gives us principal of $124.95. And we subtract that from the loan amount of $153, which gives us the $152,875.05. Yeah, we got the principal and interest using the loan factor. Then we get the annual interest using the loan amount and the interest rate, which gives us, yes, principal and interest minus interest gives us the principal only. How much did that monthly payment drop the principal by? It dropped it by $124.95. Did I miss a question you were asking? Are we good? Okay. So yeah, then subtract that $124.95 from the original amount of loan, and that's what your loan is going to be after your first month's payment, $152,875. It could take it another step. They might ask you, what is the payment after the second month? I doubt they'll ask you for longer than that, third, fourth, fifth. So if it's the second month, then you do all these same steps, except instead of 153, you're going to use 152,875. You with me? Because that's going to result in what will the loan balance be after the second month. So if we do that, 152,875 times 7 gives us, I'm going to have to make some space here. $10,701.25 compared to what it was down here, right? So this time, take that, divide it by 12, gives us $891.77 instead of this. So that's our interest. Same P and I, right? That stays the same. That 17.45, that's the P and I no matter what, because it's a fixed amortized loan. Subtract that 891.77 of interest. Yeah. And our P this time is 125.68 compared to what it was last time, 124. Pitifully small amount, depressingly small amount of progress, right? But we take that P and we subtract it from the loan balance we got last time, 152,875.05. So our loan balance after the second month would be 152,749.37. Again, for the second month, just replace the loan amount with the new one, right? Not the original loan amount. It's going to be the one you calculated after the first month. So you have to do the first month in order to calculate the second month. So if the test question says, what would their loan balance be after the second month? You're going to be like, oh, crap. Okay, I got to do the first month, and then I got to do the second month. They won't say after the 15th month. That'd just be a jerk move right there. Who has time for that? Questions? Any other specific math problems that you can think of? Okay, let me see. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Now, let's see if they've got one here. Well, I can't find one off the top of the bat here, but let me see if I can make something up. It's going to be using the conventional qualifying ratios of 2836. And let me think. They might say that the PITI is $1,150. Car payment is $300. Credit cards, $130. And then say, oh, their monthly gross income is $7,300. That seems, let me try another one. Let's say $5,100. I'm pulling from air here. And then the question would be, do they qualify for this loan? And so you're going to need to calculate it for the front end and the back end ratio. And let's go that far and then see what we get. Yeah, so the PITI only matters with the 28. But for all of it together, we're going to use 36 because that's including the PITI and the recurring debt. So let's see if they qualify under the front end ratio alone. PITI related to the 28%. 5,100, that's right. So let's see. If we take that 1150 PITI and divide it by 28%, that gives us 4,107. Do they make 4,107? Yeah, so we're good there. They qualify under that. Right. That works too. Yep. And then let's take the whole thing, PITI plus recurring debt, 300 plus the 130. So the total everything is 1580. So 1580 divided by this time 36% is 4389. Good news. Happy borrower. They more than qualify. What if this number what if we had a whole nother bunch of stuff here like student loans? Let's set it up. Let's sabotage ourselves. And instead of 1580, let's say like the loans are 830. See if that'll do it. And let's say the car is $500. So 1150 plus 500 plus 830 is 2480. Divide that by 36. Oops, sorry, borrower. You need to downsize some of your expenses, right? So do they qualify for this loan? No. They do under the front end ratio, but not the back end ratio. Therefore, they don't qualify for this loan. Well, if they'll probably give you a laundry list of things, and then you know the ratios. So they could say, does this borrower qualify for this loan, like we just did? In which case you would need to compare their monthly gross income with what those ratios produce. Or it could say, which one does it not qualify under? Maybe they would ask you that way. Anytime you can put an equation together, you can now turn that into a T formula. So monthly income times the ratio gives us the PITI. Their monthly income. In this case, I was just taking this equation and turning it into a T formula. But it's probably going to be that. It's probably going to be, does this borrower qualify for this loan? And so you're going to need to take the expenses and then divide them by the appropriate ratio, 28 or 36, depending on, is it PITI only or all of it together, and then compare that to what their gross monthly income is. That's the real world way to apply it too. So that's probably how you're going to see it. Let me see. Exactly. Not just the car payment and credit card, but that plus the PITI. Because think about it. The lender wants to know, can this person afford this loan that they're asking for? They're going to have to pay the PITI because that's what it costs to own this new house that they want us to loan money for. And they're also going to have to pay their car payment and their credit card and their student debt and their medical expenses and whatever else is recurring. Can it fit into their lifestyle? And so that's when a lender might say, well, how much do you like that car? Are you willing to sell it, get rid of that part, and not have to pay $500? That'll get you under the qualifying ratio so that we can give you this loan. That's something people have to do. And in an extreme case that goes the other way, they do all this stuff to get the loan, and then they show up to closing driving a new car. And everybody's like, oh, crap. They just killed their ratios the day of closing, a day before closing, because now the lender's going to have to recalculate and see that new car is a payment of what? And I was qualifying you under a payment of $200, and this new car is $500. Are the numbers tight enough so that matters? So as a broker, we give our buyers this advice. We say, look, that lender for this house is now your financial advisor for this next few weeks, because anything you spend or do or get a loan for, you need to ask them first. Don't go buying furniture from Rooms to Go on credit, Lowe's appliances. Don't get carried away. Buy that after the house, because all of that can affect your ability to borrow. And so that's why this is important. Those ratios matter. And so it's lease. Yeah, sure. So what you need to know about that, they're going to ask you which type of lease involves expenses. That might be a way they ask it. Which type, fixed, net, or percentage lease? Which one involves expenses? The renter is paying some of the expenses. Yeah, net lease, right? Yeah. The net lease is about the expenses. And I just remember it by thinking about the given formula, how operating expenses from gross income equals net operating income. It's just a wordplay thing for me there. And then a percentage lease is calculated by figuring how much income is that tenant bringing in, and the landlord wants to make a percentage of it, percentage of that income. They're going to base their rent on how well they did every month. Let's see if there's one built into the chapters on that. Oh yeah, it's a more of a commercial thing. It's both of these are what you're going to run into in commercial real estate. In a traditional residential lease, you're just paying a monthly rent. But percentage of income wouldn't be, it's not, they don't mean your income at whatever job you have. They mean your income of the business you run out of this rented space you're renting from them. So it's commercial. It's not like, oh, you work at Lowe's Home Improvement as a greeter, therefore what percent of that income? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you're opening up a hair salon, therefore you're renting space to run that hair salon. How much did you earn at that hair salon in this commercial space you're renting from me? I want you to pay me rent based on how much you made in my space that you rented from me. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, that's right. That's not, yes. The income based, I guess, would that be they check your income to see if you qualify to rent there? Is that what you mean? So like it's sort of like assistance kind of arrangement, an assistance plan. You're helping. Yeah, okay, that's a different. That'd be like, let's help someone who otherwise wouldn't be able to rent. And if they make more than a certain amount, they can't probably have that one. It's sort of like Section 8 when it comes to buying houses, except for rent. Probably government assistance or something like that. I'm sure there is. It's just fraud. For this class, it's not something we dive into, but yeah, if you lie on an application, um, I don't know what the ramifications would ultimately be. If they didn't find out you lied, obviously they'd probably have grounds to evict you. But I'm not sure about criminal proceedings like loan fraud. I would imagine it's still fraud, so you'd be subject to some kind of criminal charges. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, license law quiz. Yeah, let me pull that up. That was a while ago. Which number? You say 5, I think. 5. Yeah, the full-time commercial experience in a qualifying state, I don't think they go to depth of the 2 years thing. So that wouldn't be it. Supervised by a North Carolina broker in charge. That might be wrong because instead of saying that, it could just say firm. I believe so. I think that's why that's not the correct one. Let me see. Limited non-resident. Trying to look it up. See if I can pull it up in the comments. There we go. Let's see here. There we are. That's what I'm looking at. Residing in a state other than North Carolina, holds active where their primary place of business is. They don't talk about 2 years specifically. May apply for and obtain the license, entitles them to engage for commercial. They will remain affiliated with their out-of-state company, not have a North Carolina broker in charge. There you go. That's why that one's not right. The non-resident licensee must enter into a notification of broker affiliation and a brokerage cooperation agreement with a resident North Carolina broker not on provisional status, supervised by that broker. Broker meaning anybody who has a license in commercial, right? They could just be affiliated. They don't have to be affiliated with the actual broker in charge of the firm, but with a broker who does commercial. And that person is going to basically be their sponsor, so to speak, that they are, whose their responsibility is making sure that out-of-state person follows the rules and laws properly. And it specifically says they will remain affiliated with their out-of-state company. They will not have a North Carolina broker in charge. That's why that one is. Right. Exactly. Yep. And that broker of the commercial, North Carolina commercial firm that they're affiliated under for this purpose, they have a BIC, but there doesn't have to be a BIC for this out-of-state person. Where did that go? Oh, it was over here. Any others? Math related or practice exam related? We'll just take a look at anything at this point. Sure. From that license law one? Let's see if I have that close by. Oh, good. You say 14 and 15? All right. Let's do it this way. I'll make it make it a PDF. $14 and $15. According to North Carolina license law, which of the following is true? They say the right one is unlicensed brokers may be paid a portion of their buyer agents. Oh, unlicensed buyers may be paid a portion of their buyer agent's commission. Is that what you have a question about? So a buyer, your buyer client, you can give them money. You can rebate them your commission. They don't have a license, but that's okay. They are a party to the transaction. Therefore, you can give them money. You can give them all your commission if you want to. Think about it. If they what? So don't confuse it between being a seller's agent and a buyer's agent. Well, it's the same thing as a seller. Think of it that way. If you're a listing agent representing a seller, can you charge them 5%? Sure. Can you charge them 4%? Yes. You can give them whatever split or whatever commission you want to charge them that your firm will allow. It's no different when you're on the buyer side. As a buyer agent, you can rebate a portion of your commission or all of it to your client. And there are some buyer's agents out there that have that as a business model. They advertise that. They say, I will rebate you 1% of the sale price. And they're just planning to give their buyer, in order to get buyer business, they're willing to give them and promise to give them part of the commission up front. So that is allowed because could they do that? Could a buyer agent give a portion of their commission to their buyer's friend because it's a mutual friend and they referred the buyer to them? No, because that person's not a part of the contract. That'd be giving a referral fee to an unlicensed person. This is not that same thing. This is just giving a party to the transaction who is your client some of your commission. So that's allowed. Just like negotiating your listing commission is allowed on the seller side. It's the same idea. We just don't think of it that way because the money's coming routed from the seller, right, through their agent over to the buyer side. So we don't really think of it as something that can happen. But yeah. And I've done that. In fact, if I have a double duty, like a two-sided deal where I will work with a person to sell their home, but then also help them buy one, I'd rather not give them the deal on the listing commission because that's going to close first. And if I give them a discount on the listing commission, what if they decide they don't like me anymore? And even though we struck a deal and I said, well, I'll give you a discount on the listing if you use me to help you buy. But I give them the discount on the listing and they don't use me to help them buy. Right? It'd be safer to me to charge them full on the listing and then give them a rebate on the purchase because that's the second one and I know for sure I'm going to get it. Right? So that I'm not saying you should do it that way. I'm just saying there's a case to be made for it. So, or you could do both. You could say, I'll give you a discount on the listing and I'll give you a rebate on the buy because maybe, for instance, it's new construction and maybe even they're paying a bonus or something. Sometimes if you're buying new construction and not in this market, but it's going to come back, the builder is so desperate for business that they will pay a bonus to the agent. And sometimes that bonus sort of gets brought up in the negotiating. Your client's like, wait a minute, we're $2,000 apart from what I want to pay versus what they're willing to sell for. Aren't you making a $2,000 bonus? Wouldn't you rather at least have a commission? Can't you just give me that bonus? They'll start picking your pocket. Do you want to do it? No. Will you do it? Business decision, right? Right? What's the grand scheme? Maybe you don't. Maybe this person has been on your case the whole time and you're just over it. And you're like, you know what? No, I don't care what you think of me. Let's just get this one done. I'm not giving you money. You can just be mad at me because you're already going to be anyway. It just case by case, right? But yeah, this one, you could certainly do that. Were any of the wrong answer choices confusing? You want to see why they're not the right one? Broker who changes firms may not be paid a commission when the property they previously had listed is closed and funded. Yeah. Yeah, they were just making sure, because see, if it were a licensed buyer, then that would be more easy to grasp. You'd be like, well, that's just a referral fee between agents. I have a licensed buyer I'm working with right now. They just let their license go inactive. But even if they had not let it go inactive, they have a real estate license still active. Maybe they just don't want to do it. They want me to kind of guide them through it. So it was important for them to put unlicensed to kind of make sure that you knew this is not a licensee situation. It would it would still be a consideration thing. It'd still be giving them money in exchange for it. Like it'd be no different than that whole thing about managing your grandma's duplex. You live in one side for free rent to manage the other side for her. You're still doing real estate for someone else for a fee. So that's what B looks like too. And then you said 15. A broker who recommends an inappropriate sales price to their client for the purpose of enabling a personal friend of the broker to purchase at a discounted price may receive all of the following except. So they basically are self-dealing here. They're doing something to help their friend, not their client. And would they get suspended by the commission? Yes, they would. But so therefore, that's not the answer, because we're looking for the thing that would not happen. Would they have a possible judgment to pay civil damages? You bet they could get sued. Mandatory education required by the commission? Yes, as part of their discipline, they could say you need to take an ethics course because you forgot about ethics. So which one would not happen? Mandatory reimbursement of any financial losses as required by the commission. The commission doesn't handle the money. They could discipline you, but they wouldn't be the one that required you to pay money back to someone. You'd have to, it'd be the court. The court, once you got sued civilly, the court would say, oh, yes, you're guilty of this. You must pay. That could be part of that. But the commission's involvement would just be disciplining you with a reprimand, censure, suspension, or revocation. Yeah, that'd be right, exactly. So think about what entity they're talking about, what authority figure are they talking about? The commission versus the courts versus the realtor association, for that matter. The realtor association could handle a money dispute between you and another firm, but the real estate commission would not handle a money dispute between you and another firm or another broker. They don't care, right? They care about the consumer. Between broker to broker problems, that's a realtor association issue. So don't even call the commission about such a complaint. Anything else in this license law? That's a good idea. We probably should do that some on Wednesday too. Well, it's 10 questions out of the 40 on the state portion. Yeah. So yeah, it's and that state portion of the PSI exam is the one that tends to be, if there's one where one gets passed, one gets failed, most people fail the state a time or two. But I believe so. Yeah, it depends on the school. The last few people that I've taught who have taken the PSI have passed it the first time. As far as the class rate, that tends to hover around that same range, because think about it, people who actually take the PSI successfully completed and passed the class. So they have kind of an advantage. People who are taking the class, that just means they paid $400 or $500. It doesn't account for, were they even successful in school and knew how to study when they did go to school? How long ago was that? Or do they have test anxiety? Do they have math anxiety? Did they even do the work? Did they really spend an hour or two for every hour in class? Probably not. Did they sit there at their computer and watch Price is Right in the distance while the class was going on. I have no doubt that happens quite a bit. That people are only half paying attention sometimes. Not necessarily in my classes, maybe, but across the board. So it's just too many moving parts to, I'm not surprised a bit that it would hover around that 50-60% mark to get out of the class alone. There's too many factors there. And yes, let me think. Let's see. Yeah, I believe it's covered. Let me see what it said about that. Upon passing the exam, you'll receive email confirmation within 24 hours. I thought I saw something about the moment, like in the class. If I can't find it here in a second. Right. That makes sense. Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I saw somewhere, I can't find it now, but I believe you find out in the moment or pretty quick, same night, but then we'll follow up with an email saying, "Yep, congratulations again. We're going to tell the commission what just happened, and then you're now therefore free to apply." Because you wouldn't want to apply the same night because the commission doesn't know yet. We haven't had time to tell them yet. So that email confirmation is going to be saying, "Yep, we've reported that your score to them. Now you're good to apply and spend your $156, to go further, to go with the commission and then schedule with PSI." Oh, thanks. Well, good. It's just there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into place, and it really is. It is. And sometimes I'm not saying it's super complicated. I don't think it's like a calculus class or a what you call it? I just lost my word again. Like a philosophy class or something that require, or like a law, an LSAT or anything. But it's just a lot. Like you said, it's just a ton of information. Sometimes it's stuff that you just don't think about in a certain way. You don't think about these legal terms. You don't think about how to apply this math. The math people normally do day to day is calculating a tip, maybe, but that's even put on the receipt for you. So it's all of that in a short time, 10, 12 weeks, and now you've got to be tested. Frankly, I think part of that process is intentionally made to weed out people that aren't going to work hard enough in the business, because they want to make sure they have people that are going to have that really grasp the fiduciary responsibility and put in the work. Because you've got to problem solve. You got to think on your feet in real life in this business. You've got to take sometimes a phone call from somebody who's just completely fussing at you, deal with it without fussing back, hopefully, fix the problem, move on to the next thing with a happy client, back and forth sometimes. And it's just so many plates that are spun, especially as a new agent. You're doing everything. You can't afford to hire help yet. So it's a lot. It's more than what it looks like on HGTV, right? And I think that's sadly what people come into it thinking it's going to be like. Mhm. Yeah, right. Yeah, that goes back to test taking. um, anxiety slash skill slash paying attention. And that'd be another thing to make a list of and think every time I read a question, what do I need to watch for? If it's a contract question, did they say contract or did they say offer? If it's agency question, did they say in-house sale or did they say cross sale or co-brokerage, which would mean two separate firms? Did they say dual agency or designated dual agency? Um, Gosh, all of those things you just have to make kind of a mental list and think, okay, be careful. And just when you think you've grasped what they're asking, look at it one more time and make sure that you agree with yourself that you really did. Because I've never scored 100 on these practice exams myself. I still rush through it. I still make little silly mistakes. So I don't know if that's encouraging or not, but it's just real world. It's always easy to overlook just one little word, and sometimes I miss the word accept. I think I did it this last time. I just totally answered, and reading it back over when I saw what I missed, I'm like, well, that was just stupid because it clearly said all of the following except, and I answered just as if it said all of the following. I picked one that just because those answer choices they give you are intentionally including phrases that you have studied, and you're like, oh, that's it. I saw that phrase before. So be careful comparing the answer choice with what they actually asked you. Looking for the thing that it is or the thing that it isn't. Oh, certainly my pleasure. Glad to help. And again, this is a crucial week, so reach out to me. I'm happy to give you a little I could do a customized video or audio explainer of things and post it to Notion if need be. Whatever you need, and I'll see you Wednesday. Bring any other. Yep, it'll be I'm going to make sure we pay attention to agency and contracts and acceptance and communication and finance and let's see all the heavy, all the big points, and then any sort of test questions referred back to these midterms and finals that people might have. Yep. So bring whatever you want to talk about. We'll make it your own. Mm-hmm. Estates. Okay. Sure. So an explainer on loan types. Okay. Loan types and agency. Okay. All right. Easy enough. What else? Title transfer me. There we go. Transfer to real property, agency, and loan types. Got it. Sure thing. You mean like what sorts of words fall in that category you're thinking of? Oh, right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll look well, I'm thinking some of that, I mean, it could be talking about estates, types of ownership, but I guess it's talking about selling, actually transferring to, but would that be consciously selling or losing it to foreclosure? But I'll look it up and make sure that. Yeah. You'll remember. As to liens, obviously the easiest, most obvious question is what's the kind of lien that's going to be paid first? Yep. So there's that. Let's see what I can find. Um, what else did you say was on there? You thought? On the state, the final state? Trying to do a search for words. See if it'll pop up. But I haven't found anything about liens yet. Just doing the word search. If you find the exact one, just let me know. Oh, right. You don't have the full, all the questions? Okay. Give me a second. I'll scan through here and see if I can find it. I got two emails. One that showed what I missed, and another that, well, it might just be me because of instructor. This might just be all the answers. Tell me again. Was that Rebecca? You said it was related to liens. Maybe it had excise tax in there too. Okay. Well, till I can find it, let's think about it. What was the question? Yeah, I don't know that it was. It might have been. What did it? Let's see. That might be an easy. Yeah. Was it this one? Okay. What about this one? So which of the follow? Oh, let me search that one in a minute. Which of the following liens holds first priority regardless of when it was recorded? So the only time that recordation matters is after the tax and special assessments have been handled. If there's a tax lien, that's always first. Property tax liens are always first. Special assessments by the government are always number 2. Everything else is in order of when it was recorded. So which of the following holds first priority regardless of when it was recorded? Not the mortgage lien, because that could fall below a mechanic's lien depending on when they were recorded. Purchase money lien, that's seller financing. A purchase money mortgage. Federal income tax, even though it's federal IRS income tax, that's still subject to when it was recorded. It might get recorded after the state income tax, and therefore state takes priority, takes precedence. So the only one that's not recording prioritized is property tax, ad valorem. Does that make more sense? Property tax. Yeah. Right. Ad valorem is Latin for at value, at the property's value, meaning at the assessed value that they've given as tax value. So at value tax, property, real estate tax lien, always number 1. Good likelihood you'll see some kind of a question testing you on that. Taxes are first. Special assessment by the government second. Yes, they're probably going to test you on that word, ad valorem. Then you'll probably never see it in your whole career because people call it property tax. Oh, and then what was the other one? You said it was something to do with deed of trust. Was it this one? Contract? What must be recorded to be valid? Except. Which one? Yeah. What about this one? What comes void upon death of the principal? A listing contract, not this other stuff. Sales contract, promissory note, deed of trust are all still in effect and beholden to the estate, even if the principal seller owner dies. And there's this one. That's a good one. Clause in a deed of trust permitting lender to declare everything immediately due and payable upon default. If it's a default, it's the acceleration clause. It says, oh, you screwed up. You didn't keep up your end, therefore you got to pay us everything you owe us. Alienation clause would be another word for due on sale clause. You're alienating yourself from the property, and if you're selling it, that lender's not going to let you keep your mortgage going, even though that'd be great. Be a great financial tool if you could do that, but you would have lost the collateral. That lender would no longer have any collateral as security. Therefore, they're like, nope, you sell the collateral that you gave us, you got to pay us our loan off. You got to pay the loan off. Escalator clause, no. Forfeiture clause is not a thing. That's it for things with the word deed of trust in them. What else? Oh, let's see. You had mentioned loan types. Talk about that if you like. So the loan types like conventional, FHA, VA, that kind of thing. Okay. So the types of loans. So one of them is private, and then 2 of those 3 are government related, right? So private or non-government versus government. Now, meaning the government's not helping. The government's not either insuring or guaranteeing a conventional loan. But I don't want you to confuse that with the other thing that I mentioned. If they ask you something like, which of the following loan types are federally related? That's everything, all of them, even conventional, because the government oversees the process now so as to not run into another 2008 thing. As a result of the Dodd-Frank Act, the legislation that was passed to help fix the problems that occurred because of too many subprime mortgages that were made. In other words, the lenders were loaning money to people that probably shouldn't have qualified, but they thought, well, even though this is a loan I probably shouldn't make because I'm setting this person up for failure, basically, even though that's happening, I'm still going to make the loan because I'm going to make a ton of interest on it. And inevitably, that person couldn't keep it up, couldn't keep their payments, and they lost the house. And so there was a ton of foreclosures all at the same time because there was a whole bunch of people that really shouldn't have been given loans because they didn't qualify financially. The lender had dropped their requirements for qualifying so low that they were able to give them a loan, but it was purely for their own best interest, the lender's best interest, right? Not for the good of the client. In this rebound market, after all of that, part of that Dodd-Frank Act is, hey, let's be more realistic about who we qualify for loans so that they have a chance of success. Why give somebody a loan if they're going to almost 100% guaranteed going to default on it because they can't maintain it, right? So that was the problem, this subprime mortgage market. It was not enough to think that somebody, even if they're in financial difficulty, is always going to make their house payment. That was a gamble that was made by lenders that they failed at. They lost because it turns out people are willing to let their house go into foreclosure if it means keeping the lights on at some other place. Go live with relatives. Go rent something instead of keeping that house payment. Yeah, it's a foreclosure on your record for 10 years at least, but there's still bills to pay, food, there's the car to get you to work. And turns out people don't want to let go of that car because they have to go to work to make the money. So they'll let the house go first. So they learned that the hard way. Anyway, so yes, all loans are in a way, in a sense, federally related in that the government has some oversight. But when it comes to the whole thing about a lender wanting 20% equity, they would rather you put a 20% down payment because the lender feels she's much less likely to default if she has that much she could potentially lose if she defaulted. Well, that would get rid of a whole lot of people from being able to buy a house. If only people who have 20% to put down can buy it, then there's not going to be nearly as many buyers. And so we increase our buyer pool by figuring out a way for buyers who can't afford 20% down to buy a house too. And so if we have a 3.5% down option, which happens to be the most common FHA minimum down payment loan type, that's pretty typical. There's also a 5% down payment for a conventional loan. And sometimes there's even less. Depends on the lender, depends on the loan. Sometimes you might find other amounts down that are even lower. But the standard FHA minimum down payment right now is 3.5% down. And then what else is it about FHA? FHA, let's just talk about that versus conventional. FHA allows for a lower down payment. Conventional tends to be no lower than 5%. Conventional requires a higher credit score. Got to have better credit. Conventional, if it's less than 20% down, requires private mortgage insurance, but you can cancel it once you hit that 20% equity. Does that make sense when I say that? I'll explain that in a minute. FHA's version of mortgage insurance is called MIP, and that never goes away. It can never be canceled. The only way to get out of MIP on an FHA loan is to no longer have an FHA loan, pay it off or refinance it. But the whole time that you have that FHA loan, you're going to be paying your mortgage insurance. That cannot fall off. What do I mean by fall off? When it comes to PMI on a conventional loan, that kind of mortgage insurance can go away. Because let's say that you put 5% down. So this much is your money. So coming out of day one, closing on that loan, you have 5% equity in the property. 5% was your down payment. That's how much equity you have in the property. And over the course of your ownership, maybe the first 5 or 10 years, as the market appreciates, your equity increases above that 5% a little bit. As you maybe make a capital improvement, build a room, upgrade the kitchen, so capital improvements, that's going to increase your equity a little bit. See, you're getting closer and closer to that 20%. And then as you maybe make extra payments, maybe you get a little bit extra. Maybe you throw your tax refund onto your principal. So you make extra payments. That's going to increase your equity. So now eventually you've attained 20% of the value of the property as yours. 20% is your equity, meaning between appreciation, that goes to you. That's for your benefit. When the property appreciates, your lender's not saying, oh, Yahoo, that's more that you owe me. No, that's more that you own in the property as a proportion of the total. So what has been happening all this time, these 5-10 years that all this stuff is happening, what's been happening to your loan amount? It's been steadily decreasing as you make a payment every month, 1 month, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that loan amount has, maybe it started at 150 that you borrowed, and after the 10th year, I'm just totally pulling from air here, I'm going to guess, maybe now it's 100 in year 10. So now if you sold the property, you would, if you sold it for what you bought it for, you would get 50 more thousand, right? Because you paid 50,000 off. But what's been happening in the meantime, as your loan is going down, the value is going up, right? For these various reasons. So that's what mortgage insurance is for. It exists to protect that lender for this amount of space, this amount of money. It's covering the lender for this amount. From here up, they're good because of the collateral. They're good because if they have to foreclose on you, they can sell the property and get back a good chunk of money from the sale of the property that they took back from you because you stopped paying properly. And then this difference here is covered by this PMI mortgage insurance policy. So a conventional loan less than 20% down charges PMI. An FHA loan less than 20% down includes MIP. And then a VA loan is guaranteed by the government, while the FHA loan is insured by the government. It's insured through this MIP. The VA loan is guaranteed by the government. That lender can feel confident that if there's a default, and they're whatever's less than that 20% they would rather you have in it, they're covered. They're going to be okay because the government guarantees that lender on this particular loan. So anytime you see the word guarantee, they're talking about a VA loan. If you see the word insured, they're talking about an FHA loan. If you see the word like private as opposed to government related, when you're comparing these loan types, they're talking about a conventional loan. If even a military person or a veteran, if they have a choice of these 3 types, which type should they try first to qualify for? Yeah, everybody should always try that one because it's cheaper expenses, right? With VA, there's some stuff. There's like a funding fee. There's a handful of things. Even if you're coming in to getting that loan with no money down, that doesn't mean that you're not having expenses rolled into the loan amount. That's what they do. They don't make you pay at closing. You can buy it. You can get to closing and get the keys for no money down, but they're going to roll these charges into the amount that you're borrowing. So you thought you were borrowing $150,000, but what you're really borrowing is $150,000 or $160,500. I'm just making up numbers here because you're rolling in these extra charges to the loan amount. So when you go to sell it, you're going to have to pay back more than what you originally borrowed because they basically rolled the fees onto the loan amount instead of charging them to you as in closing cost up front. So there's more, and plus, like for FHA, That's not as good a deal as conventional because, again, you can never get out of this. How much would MIP add to your PITI? Well, PITI, we know what that could be. Let's say $1,500. A mortgage insurance on top of that could be another 100 or two, maybe 150. And per month, every month, $1,200 a year. Where if you could put that 100 toward just the payment, if you don't need to pay MIP, and it could be put toward more house that you could afford, that's when people start thinking, well, I would like to only put 3.5% down for FHA, but I have the money and I could do 5% down. I'd rather have the money in my bank account or in a jar in the backyard. But wait a minute. So there's more fees with FHA. Well, then instead of only going 3.5, I'll go ahead and do 5. So I can get, so that when I hit 20%, for instance, I can get out of the MIP. That's when you start comparing the loan types and picking which one is really, what's more important, your short-term objectives or your long-term objectives. For some people, they just need to stop renting. They just want to get into something, and the best way, quickest way to get into something is let's just get this FHA loan and maybe go for 5 years, and maybe we can save up enough to refinance it into a conventional. Then we can make our way up toward getting to that 20% equity mark and cancel that. Well, in this case, it'd be canceling the PMI. Does that help? Those are sort of the hot buttons of loan types. And I'll still make the recording, but I just thought since we're here, I can talk about it. And then agency. I think you asked about that, Ben. Did you? Was that you? Anything in particular specific about agency? Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, I'll make those. Unless you have other questions, I'll just make those recordings and post them here in a little while. Good? You're welcome. You take care, buddy. You too.